Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something really fundamental in the New Testament that might actually surprise you. How Yahweh's name shows up, often hidden in plain sight.
hmm
Think about the Old Testament, loads of names, maybe 150 or so, appearing hundreds of times, all with the divine name baked in, these theophoric names.
Right.
Our focus today, how that same name, Yahweh, echoes in the New Testament, both through those kinds of names and, well, this really powerful title name, I Am. We're drawing this directly from the material you shared with us.
Exactly. And it's fascinating because, for most people reading in English, that connection isn't always obvious.
Right. It's sort of lost in translation sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. It's like hearing a familiar tune, but maybe played on a different instrument or in a different key.
Yeah,
Our goal is to help you hear that underlying melody, those connections back to Yahweh.
absolutely. And we know you, our listener, value getting straight in the point, getting that knowledge quickly and thoroughly. That's what this deep dive aims to deliver. So let's start with those theophoric names again, but in the New Testament. Just remind us, what exactly is a theophoric name?
Sure. It's basically just a name that has the name of a god or deity embedded right into it. It's a way of, linguistically showing a connection or maybe a characteristic of that divine figure.
Okay. And the biggest example in the New Testament, the one we all know, is Yeshua, Jesus.
That's the one.
Break down its significance for us quickly.
Well, Yeshua, which becomes Jesus for us in English, it's straight from Hebrew, and it means Yahweh Saves.
Yahweh Saves.
Yeah. And think about this. It shows up almost 1,000 times in the New Testament.
1,000 times. Wow.
So it's this constant, even if we don't always notice it, pointer back to Yahweh's saving action.
That frequency alone just tells you how foundational it is, doesn't it? But it's not just Yeshua, right? You mentioned there are others.
Oh, yeah. Beyond Yeshua, there are roughly 20 other theophoric names. They appear collectively maybe 270 times. And for the first Jewish Christians, these names would have really resonated. They shared that language, that heritage.
Right. They'd immediately get the meaning. Can you give us a few examples that stand out? What do they mean?
Sure. Let's see. Elijah. That means my God is Yahweh. Appears 29 times.
Okay.
Then there's Isaiah, Yahweh has saved. That one's in there 22 times.
Yeah. Same root as Yeshua, almost.
Similar idea, yeah. And John, very common name, right?
Right.
I mean, the Yahweh has shown favor. Shows up 136 times.
John. Really? I never knew that.
Yeah. And even Matthew, we think of it as just, Matthew. But it means gift of Yahweh.
Gift of Yahweh.
Appears 5 times. So you see, the New Testament language itself is just sort of subtly packed with these references back to Yahweh. It's a connection we often miss today in English.
That's actually pretty striking. These everyday names carrying such weight, it really grounds the New Testament in its Jewish roots.
It really does.
Now, let's shift gears a bit to something maybe even more direct, more powerful. Jesus' use of the divine title, I Am. This feels really significant.
It is hugely significant. And to really get it, we have to go back to Exodus chapter 3.
Moses in the burning bush.
Exactly. That's where Yahweh reveals his name to Moses. And crucially, he pairs his unique personal name, Yahweh, with this declaration, I am.
Right. I am. W-H-U. I am. That moment. What's the core meaning of I am there?
Well, the Hebrew, it comes from the verb to be, or maybe to become. Yahweh uses it as this unique title name. It signals his eternal nature, his self-existence, his constant presence.
Okay.
And look at the parallelism in Exodus. Moses is told, I am has sent me to you. And then right after, Yahweh has sent me to you. It directly equates the title I am with the name Yahweh.
So using I am wasn't just saying I exist. It was claiming that specific divine identity.
Precisely. For anyone else to claim that title, that would be seen as, well, the ultimate blasphemy, putting yourself on the same level as God Almighty.
Okay, that sets the stage. Now, fast forward. The Old Testament gets translated into Greek, the Septuagint. How does I am appear there?
The Hebrew AA becomes ego eimi in Greek, which just means I am.
Simple enough.
On the surface, yes. But here's the kicker. When Jesus uses ego eimi in the New Testament, especially in John's writings, it's often in ways that deliberately echo that Old Testament divine usage.
Ah, so it's not just any casual I am. It carries the weight of the Septuagint's translation of God's title.
That's the key connection. It adds this whole other layer when Jesus says it.
Okay, let's look at where he says it. In the book of Revelation, we see the glorified Jesus using I am. What's the context there?
Right. In Revelation, Jesus uses I am to really assert his divine power, his eternal nature, now that he's in heavenly glory.
So big cosmic statements.
Exactly. You hear things like, I am the Alpha and the Omega.
Mm.
I am the first and the last and the living one. Also, I am he who searches the minds and hearts, and I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Powerful declarations of who he is.
Grand statements, definitely fitting for his heavenly status, but maybe less surprising to the audience there who already recognize him.
Perhaps, yes.
But it feels different in the Gospel of John, doesn't it? Where he's walking the earth, often among people who don't fully grasp who he is.
Exactly. That's where it gets really pointed.
Yeah.
In John, Jesus seems to use I am in, you could say, two main ways. Sometimes it's subtly linked with these big claims he's making.
Okay.
And other times it's just direct, bold, unmistakable pronouncements.
Let's unpack the subtle uses first. How does he pair I am with other claims?
Okay, think about those famous I am statements in John. He uses ego eimi right before claiming these attributes or roles that, in the Old Testament, really belong to Yahweh.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Sure. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door of the sheep. I am the good shepherd.
All very familiar.
Right. And also, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am the true vine. In each case, he's using that specific phrase, ego eimi, right before claiming these essential divine functions. It's like he's hinting, playing on the divine title, without explicitly shouting, I am Yahweh.
So it's this incredibly clever, subtle wordplay pointing directly at his divinity.
That's a good way to put it. Very profound.
Okay, now for the other category. The times he uses I am much more boldly. Just the title itself.
Yes. These are really striking moments. The scene where he walks on the water, for instance, John chapter 6.
Right. Disciples freaking out in the storm, they see a figure on the water. Terrifying.
Totally terrifying. And what does Jesus say?
He says,
Ego eimi, I am. Then he adds, do not be afraid. He doesn't just say, hey, it's me. He uses the loaded title.
wow, ego eimi.
And notice the effect. Immediately, their fear seems to lessen. They're willing to take him into the boat. It's as if the declaration itself carried authority over the chaos.
That's powerful. Okay, then there's that really intense argument in John chapter 8. That whole section feels like it's building towards something explosive.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly tense. It starts early on. Jesus says, quite starkly, unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins.
Just like that, using the title.
Just like that. Ego eimi. And they immediately challenge him, who are you? He deflects slightly, but then repeats it, saying, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am.
So he's doubling down.
He is.
Yeah.
And the conversation just escalates. They bring up Abraham. He challenges their lineage, saying their real father is the devil.
Yeah.
It gets ugly.
Yeah.
They accuse him of being possessed. Then Jesus makes this statement about Abraham. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad.
And they're incredulous, right? Like, you're not even 50. How could you have seen Abraham?
Exactly their reaction. You are not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? And then comes the absolute bombshell. Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am.
Ego eimi, again. But the grammar there. Before Abraham was I am, not I was.
Precisely. That's the key. It's grammatically jarring in Greek, just as it sounds in English. He's not claiming to have existed before Abraham in a simple timeline. He's claiming timeless existence using the divine title. It's a direct claim to be Yahweh.
And they certainly understood it that way.
No question. Their reaction. They immediately picked up stones to kill him.
For blasphemy.
For blasphemy. They knew exactly what he was claiming.
And this wasn't an isolated incident, was it?
A litter. In John 10, he says, I and the Father are one. Same reaction.
Same reaction. They reach for stones again. It hammers home how clearly his audience understood these I am statements and the claim to unity with the Father as declarations of divinity.
Okay, one more really dramatic scene. The arrest in the garden, John 18.
Yes. Even in that moment of, seeming vulnerability, Judas arrives with soldiers.
And Jesus steps forward, doesn't hide.
No. He asks them, whom do you seek? They answer, Yeshua the Nazarene.
And Jesus replies.
Again, simply, ego eimi, I am.
And the reaction this time? It's stunning. It really is. The text says, they drew back and fell to the ground.
Soldiers falling down just from him saying, I am.
Think about that. This armed group, ready for an arrest, is physically knocked back by his words. It's this incredible momentary flash of the divine power inherent in that name, that identity, even as he's about to be taken captive. It's like the mask slips for just a second.
It almost reminds you of, like, Aragorn revealing himself in Lord of the Rings, that sudden awe in the face of hidden royalty, hidden power.
That's actually a great analogy. That shock, that awe. They came for a rabbi,
Right.
and for a split second, they encountered something else entirely.
And he repeats the exchange, right, then tells them to let his disciples go, still in command.
Exactly. Even in arrest, the I am asserts his authority.
So when we put it all together, these names like Yeshua, John, Elijah, constantly whispering Yahweh, and then these bold I am declarations from Jesus himself, what's the big picture?
The big picture is that Yahweh's presence, Yahweh's identity, isn't just a background theme in the New Testament. It's right there, front and center. It's embedded in the very names people carry, reminding them of their heritage.
Right.
And, even more profoundly, it's claimed directly by Jesus through his use of that sacred title, I am. These aren't subtle hints. They are moments where he overtly identifies himself with the God of the Old Testament.
It really deepens how we read the New Testament, doesn't it? Seeing that continuity, seeing Jesus' claims in that light, it connects everything back.
It absolutely does. It shows how deeply rooted this new covenant is in the Old, and how central Jesus' identity as Yahweh was for those first believers, and, well, for us too.
And it encourages us, I think, to maybe read a bit more closely, to look for those connections we might otherwise miss.
For sure. There's always more depth there.
So, as you, our listener, think about this deep dive, the names carrying Yahweh's echo, Jesus wielding the I am title, just consider. How does knowing this reshape your view of Jesus? How does it connect the Old and New Testaments for you? And maybe what other familiar bits of the New Testament might hold similar hidden connections back to the Old Testament, just waiting to be seen?
That's a great question to ponder. The scriptures really are this incredibly rich tapestry, aren't they? Always more threads to explore.